And I don't know if anyone's looked at the sheet and seen this, but Adam does not pick his prospects well.
The question is, does Max make the playoffs if he doesn't sell?
Good evening, gentlemen. Welcome to the first and hopefully last episode of the Fuck the Nats podcast.
That's the thing. It's like when you're me and like you know that you're a fucking idiot, stick with Christian Vasquez and he will lead my team in steals again.
The memories that come to the surface most clearly are me sorting my baseball cards one way one night and then completely redoing them the next night.
Actually, I'm going to reframe this. JD, why don't you start by talking about Dylan Beavers?
Apologies, I couldn't hear your question because the audio went out.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to a special edition of the podcast. This is a first for Graydon here, one of the newest members of our league. We today are going to be discussing potential trades in the league, or trades that we find interesting. So Graydon has taken the day, and he's come up with 6 potential trades as of right now that we're going to discuss, see what everyone's opinions on, why Graydon thinks they would be good moves for their respective teams. So, let's take it away, Graydon.
Yeah, so I like preseason chatter, if you will, to keep things interesting. I'm always a big preseason power rankings guy. I'm in another fantasy league with a few people in here, namely Goober and Max, and I'm a big in that one. I'm a big preseason power rankings, going through what moves every team should make. So while these aren't power rankings, these are 6 different trades that I've sort of come up with and shared with Bean and gotten his opinion on that I think would make sense for both parties involved. And the reason we did 6 is so that there was one trade involving every single team. So you want me to go into the first one, Bean?
Yeah, let's jump right in.
Okay. So the first trade that we want to see in FTN is sort of the inspiration for this one was from Ryan Ulrich's interview. It is Ryan trades Noble Meyer, Max Clark, and 15 BAM to Perry for Andrew Painter. But there is a conditional stipulation. If Noble Meyer makes 5 MLB starts before Andrew Painter makes 5 MLB starts, 10 BAM from Perry to Ryan.
And I would say
there's a
chance of that happening.
There's a decent chance. That's why I put it in there. I feel like this one, there's some spicy trades in here, a lot of big names, just to provide a preview of what's to come. I feel like this one could end up being the most divisive. I sort of got the sense maybe that I could be one of the low people in the league on Andrew Painter, at least just like value-wise, not necessarily his talent, but
right.
To me this seems like a potentially an overpay from Ryan, but I know Ryan really wants him. I know it seems like Perry values him highly, but I mean I could see a world pretty easily where Noble Meyer is the next Andrew Painter. You're also getting a guy like Max Clark who has obviously very raw, but has 5-tool potential 5 category stud if he puts it all together, and you're getting some BAM. Which for Andrew Painter, who's not going to pitch at all this year, and who knows when he's going to pitch in 2025. I mean, that seems like a pretty good return. What are your thoughts?
And, I'm actually going to agree with you. I am pretty low on Andrew Painter, and it's not because I don't think he can be a great pitcher. It's because it's going to be a while before he's up and he's making an impact on a team. And then you do have the risk of he doesn't come back from injury the same pitcher that he was. I mean, that's always a given risk with a pitcher who suffers an injury like that. So to give up Noble Meyer, Max Clark, and 15 BAM immediately for a team that really could use talent as soon as it can arrive, I think to a lot of people, they're going to say, why on earth would you do this? But like you said, Ryan really wants the guy. If Ryan really wants him, he's like me. He's going to make that overpay. So it's an interesting one. I think the BAM is kind of whatever, because I think for teams like Ryan and Perry, there's a lot of different things they can do with that BAM. So sending, they can mess with that number, but for me, it's the Noble Clark and Max Meyer, because like you said, Noble Meyer could be a pitcher that maybe is not as good as Andrew Painter, but he's 85% there. If he's 85% there, plus you're losing Max Clark, is that really worth it? So I'd be curious to see what everyone thinks on that.
Well, and I think your point about given the state of Ryan's team, maybe he wants guys that guys that are going to be there a little bit sooner. And if that's the case, if Noble Meyer does end up making starts before Andrew Painter, there is that 10 BAM conditional, which I thought maybe makes sense just because there is the potential for that.
Now,
from what I've heard from a lot of people, a lot of people seem to be very high on Noble Meyer. Now he is a prep right-handed arm, so it's kind of like, do with that information what you will. But it seems like he could have ace stuff if he could put it together, and he is in an organization that is known for developing their pitching talent.
100%. I mean, even he did not play much, obviously, but he did, make a few starts. I think 2 or 3 starts in A ball and rookie ball. And what he did was there was a lot of promise. I mean, sure, the ERA isn't great, but you can safely ignore ERA a lot in those cases because he just came up 18 years old. What do you really expect? But the way he carried himself with his strikeouts per 9, I mean, 11.6 and 13.5, obviously very small sample size, but a lot to like. So, how old is Andrew Painter? Do you know off the top of your head?
He's either 20 or 21. I think he was scheduled to make his debut. Like people thought he was going to be on the opening day roster last year at 20 years old. So I bet he's 21 right now, maybe.
He was 19. Well, this was in 2022.
Was he 19?
So he's 21.
Okay, yeah.
So he's 21 going on 22.
Very young still. Very young.
Right, very young. But you're talking about a difference of 4 years from him, 3 years from him to Noble Meyer. So sure, there's a gap. But looking at his numbers and how Andrew Painter did versus how Noble Meyer did, if you reduce the hits per 9, it's a pretty similar stat line. Obviously, again, low sample. But I think that given the chance Ryan would make this kind of move, I think it would be a mistake for him. I think Ryan loves the punishment.
Well, he's not exactly unused to making mistakes, if you will. Sorry, Ryan, but had to slip that one in there.
Listen, we all do it. I'm not trying to throw stones in glass houses. I've made trade mistakes. I told Drew a few weeks ago that I thought my first trade with Graydon, I warned everybody. I was like, just careful what you're making trades with Graydon. And then I make one where I'm like, I probably shouldn't have done that. But it is what it is, and we're past it. And that actually brings us to our next trade because that guy is a part of this deal.
That's true. Since this one involves me, I'll let you read this one off, Ben.
Okay, so this one is going to be Graydon trades O'Neal Cruz to Jack for Kevin Gossman. So walk us through your mindset on this. I mean, obviously you're one of the teams in this deal.
Yeah, I think that this is pretty about even value-wise, and I think that it's one of those trades that just makes sense for both teams. I'm a little bit deep at shortstop. I mean, if you factor in that I've got Seager, I have Ha-Seong Kim, I have J.P. Crawford, I have Marcelo Mayer in the farm, who I don't love, but he's probably going to be a starting big league shortstop for at least a decade, if I had to guess. So I'm a little bit deep at shortstop. Obviously, especially after the trade with you, giving away Kodai Senga, my pitching leaves a lot to be desired upside-wise. Getting a guy like Gaussman, whose Ks are through the roof, he's going to get you a decent number of wins. I think would just adding a frontline starter to my rotation would be huge. And I get that, maybe if my team's not contending this year with some of the Studley squads that are in FTN. But but I'm not too worried about his age. Pitchers pitch well into their 30s nowadays. Um, and I think that he could be a good sort of, as Ryan was mentioning in the last podcast with Aaron Judge, he could be a good trade chip for teams down the line. The reason why I think that it makes sense for Jack is because I think that he could use an O'Neill Cruz in his roster. He has a very deep pitching rotation, but currently he's got Willy Adames, who I actually don't hate, and Carlos Correa.
His ankle
I mean,
can explode at any given time.
yeah, and Adames I like. He has good power, and I think that there's a semi-decent chance he ends up a Los Angeles Dodger. Carlos Correa is at this point is just sort of a bit of whatever, pretty mediocre counting stats, solid enough OBP, but the upside of O'Neill Cruz in that lineup, I think could be very exciting. And like I said, he has a very deep rotation. I mean, losing Gaussman would hurt, but you look at some of the guys in his rotation: Castillo, Kirby, Glasnow, Webb, Snell, Brian Wu, Sandy next year. I mean, I think he could withstand a loss. What do you think, Ben?
Now, I'm thinking of this just as a neutral third party. I think obviously it makes sense for you in a way. I think that, you have a team who's very good, but you're kind of in the youngerish mix. I think going out and acquiring a 32-year-old pitcher, while it may make your pitching better this year, will it really make all that difference compared to what O'Neill Cruz is hopefully going to be able to produce over his entire career? Does that really make a difference? And from Jack's point of view, you're asking him to give up a big piece of his rotation. And, Jack is not a guy, in my experience, which will take, he doesn't want the possibility of somebody being good. He wants the concrete evidence that they're good. O'Neill Cruz struck out a lot. Listen, the potential is there for miles, but there were red flags to go along with him too. So it's like, I think that if you were to talk Jack into this deal, there would need to be some other piece or some sort of band to go along with it. Because I think in Jack's mindset, it's not enough for a one-to-one. Because Kevin Gaussman, on one hand, is proven absolute talent. You pretty much know what you're going to get from him any given season. Jack needs good pitching to win this league, period. And on the other hand, you're offering a guy with sky-high ceiling, but carries some risk with him. And does it make Jack's team better? Possibly, but he doesn't know that for sure. And if you're competing for championships, I think you go for the absolutely, this will help my team right now. And Kevin Gaussman's that piece.
Yeah, I think both those points are fair. I mean, I might push back a little bit. I know that stats-wise, Gaussman has been fairly consistent. I think just being a pitcher that relies, any pitcher that relies so heavily on the splitter is going to be a little bit volatile just because it's one of the more inconsistent pitches. But I think what you said about my team, whether it makes sense getting a guy like Gaussman when you have the O'Neill Cruz's production theoretically for the rest of his career, I mean, is that going to make a difference? Is something I've thought a lot about. I've had a number of people make offers to me for Bueller and Sale and any number of the different pitchers on my roster, or offering to give a pitcher back, trading for one of my hitters, offering to give a pitcher back, and this is going to be bad. I'm embarrassed to say this, but my rotation is almost so bad and so inconsistent. I'm not sure adding one more pitcher is going to make it that big of a difference.
Right.
We'll see it. We'll see how things go. I'm excited to see how things play out, but my early plan is at least to just throw innings at this thing and say ERA and WHIP be damned. So will one elite ratio pitcher really make that much of a difference? I don't know. I've been hesitant to say that will make a difference so far, but I think it's a trade that could make sense.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think you're exactly on the right track with that. Will it make that much of a difference? So let's move on to our next trade here. So this is my favorite. This next one is my favorite. Like, what the fuck am I?
I just think it would be so fun. I mean, for so many reasons. So we won't hold you all in suspense anymore. The next trade is Drew trading Juan Soto and Kobe Mayo. One player he's been trying to trade, one player he is not trying to trade. To Vinny, our resident Yankee, for Austin Riley, Bobby Miller, Randy Arozarena, and Jason Dominguez.
You know what's
So
disgusting? This is a deal I could
what's
see happening, but please God, don't let it happen.
oh, I think it makes sense. I mean, you look at Drew's team, and I think if I was Drew, if I was in charge of Drew's team, I would be looking at a complete overhaul of the hitting lineup by trading away probably Gunnar and Soto and trying to do like a 3-for-1 or even like a 4-for-1 or something like that. I mean, you just look at, and again, ESPN projections aren't everything, but it's like you look in the RBI column, for example, at his starters, we have a 52, a 46, a 42, a 52, a 61, a 64. It's like relatively low numbers, and I know that I'm sure that Drew and maybe others right now are screaming, well, how does trading Juan Soto help that? Well, I think that you replace Soto with a Randy Arozarena, who obviously isn't Soto, but he has fairly consistent production. You add in an Austin Riley to your lineup, who would take the spot of Michael Garcia, who I actually like, but have no problem moving Michael Garcia to the bench in favor of Austin Riley. And I know that
100%.
I think that Bobby Miller, in Drew's eyes, is a top 5 pitcher. I know that Drew's been all over Bobby Miller's prospect for a long time. Um, I I think a lot of Drew's opinions are crazy, but I was very in on Gavin Stone. He was very in on Bobby Miller, and he was very right about that one. Um, and I know that Drew's been trying to add to his staff. So getting a guy like Bobby Miller to pair with G-Rod, to pair with Hunter Brown would be fun. And then you have the Kobe Mayo, Jason Dominguez swap. That was sort of the inspiration for that was knowing that Drew's been trying to trade Mayo. And, with this trade, he'd have Gunnar at third base, he'd have Riley at third base. He already has Torque at first base, where Mayo may play some. So it's kind of like, where does Mayo fit in? Could fit in better on Vinny's team, replacing Riley, and Drew gets Jason Dominguez, who I know Vinny may be hesitant to trade given his Yankees fandom, but when you're getting Soto, I don't know how hard you can push back. And for Vinny, it's a case of getting the best player in the deal. He still has Machado at third base. He still has Mayo. He still has Garrett Cole to anchor his rotation, even though he loses Bobby Miller. Soto replaces Rosarena in his lineup. It's a trade that, if Drew were ever to trade Soto, this might be the return I would ask for. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, my whole reason for saying don't do this deal is because Juan Soto would then be in my division, and I really don't want that for my rival.
That's fair.
The thing about Drew is I think he's a little bit delusional right now. His team has been.
Oh, do explain. Let's get this on record.
I would think that his team has been in a little bit of decline, and he's completely, in my mind, delusional about what this team's going to do this year. No doubt Juan Soto is going to be great. I have no doubts about that. He's Juan Soto. But he's going through this, when he told everybody he sent out this perfect roster or whatever it was, in terms of if every guy did this, this, and this, and he's just projecting that every guy's going to have the best season of their careers. They're all going to be bounced back.
He's taking a page out of your playbook.
But here's the difference. He's got guys on here. I get the young guys, because the young guys, you don't know what they're going to do. But he's like, well, Chris Bryant can be an all-star MVP again. Chris Bryant can hit 30 home runs. It's not going to happen. Chris Bryant is no longer that guy. I like Michael Garcia's StatCast, but he's on a bad team. Until we see that the Royals are going to do better, then his value is still low because he doesn't hit home runs. Sure, he steals bases, but there's a lot of guys who just steal bases, and that's all they do with a pretty mediocre OBP. Not bad, but pretty mediocre. So it's like, I'm with you. Take the big pieces. You've got some really good youth in here. You got Bo Bichette. You got Gunnar Henderson. You got Lars Nootbaar. I know that's a very divisive, person, but you got Oswald Peraza. Think of what you may of like Drew Waters. And, you go to the pitching, you got Hunter Brown, Grayrod, Lodolo. Like, there are pieces that I like, but you got to take the guys who have sky-high value, and you got to turn it into aggregate. You got to say, okay, I'm going to replace 3 or 4 guys on my active roster with an immediate upgrade. And say, sure, I'm losing Juan Soto, but it's not going to affect me that much. I think the problem with this deal is Kobe Mayo. Because Drew, for whatever reason, thinks Kobe Mayo, he's told me, and I have no problem making this public, he thinks Kobe Mayo is for 50 to 60 BAM, which in my mind is absolutely outrageous. I mean, I get it. He's a top prospect.
What do you think Mayo's worth?
I think Mayo's probably worth 35 to 40. I understand maybe that's not that.
That's probably
50
accurate.
to 60. But it's like, the guy's probably not going to get much playing time this year, so he's not an immediate upgrade on your roster. So it's like, if the Orioles said, hey, he's playing this year, then sure, his value's higher. But you have no idea when he's going to break into that lineup and actually produce for you. So he could spend a whole another year down in the minors, and you don't see him. And hey, you paid all this money for this guy. I think Drew needs to relax his pricing a little bit in order to use him as a piece. Because Drew said, I want to trade Kobe Mayo. He's on the block. So I think Drew needs to relax a little bit on the price because no one's knocking down the door for him. Certainly not at 50 to 60 BAM. I think that's a little absurd. As far as who he's getting back, I've had my own thing with Yasun Dominguez. He's obviously I've traded him before. I don't know how I feel about Randy Arozarena personally. I think Randy probably had the best season Randy's ever going to have. So I would say if there's one thing I would change about this trade is maybe picking a different player other than Randy Arozarena. I know Drew's a Randy fan, so this works for him. But
I think he's got consistent production. I mean, he's going to get you, mid-20s in the home runs at least. He's going to get you maybe around 20 steals, solid runs, solid RBIs. He's not going to kill you in OBP. I mean, that was sort of what I was trying to get out of the deal for Drew was trying to get guys that you don't have to worry about, like they're going to produce, because it seems like a lot of the guys on his roster you are worried about. I mean, is Bo Bichette going to produce? I mean, what's it going to be like? I think that Arozarena and Riley, I mean, Riley especially, in that lineup, he's locked up long term. He's going to be a counting stat machine. And I know that Drew loves Bobby Miller. It's sort of an upside play with Miller and an upside play with Jason Dominguez. But I think it's got to be a big package deal for him to move Soto. And that's what I would do if I was Drew. I mean, like you said, you got to, given the state of this roster, I think you have to go for sort of an aggregate approach.
Right. All right, so let's move on to the deal. I think this one's hilarious because it's an interdivision deal. I'll let you announce it because I'm part of it.
Sure. So similar to the Ryan acquisition of Andrew Painter, someone he has obsessed over and I'm sure messaged about multiple times, this deal is JD trading Junior Caminero and Shane Baz to Ben for Spencer Strider. I think that, yeah, so I think that, so for one, I know that I'm sure that JD does not want to trade Caminero. And I'm sure that he does not want to trade Baz because Caminero, exactly. It's 3 players that these teams don't want to trade. But at the end of the day, I know that Ben loves Caminero. I am confident that JD loves Strider, although I don't know that for a fact. And at the end of the day, one of these teams is clearly competing, and one of these teams is maybe competing, maybe not. I feel like some of the trades you've made recently have been more of a non-competing, going for some more BAM. We've just found out from Rays beat writers that Caminero is almost certainly going to start in AAA. Who knows how long he stays down there? I mean, he could be down there until June or whatever. I think it's a bit interesting. I mean, I imagine there's some service time manipulation going on here, but also, they have the new rule where you get a what is it, like a supplemental draft pick if you have a player that wins Rookie of the Year, which I mean, I would think Caminero would be I mean, he would be my favorite for AL Rookie of the Year. I think he has a better shot at it than Jackson Holiday. I think personally, just because I think his stats are going to be more are louder, more of an impact. But anyway, it's probably service time manipulation. They're going to keep him down at least for a little while. They also just came out and said that they're going to be extremely cautious with Shane Baz. I mean, I've seen some rumors that they might not be he might not be a full-time starter until later in the summer, which is a blow for me. And a couple leagues where I have Shane Baz and was counting on him. A couple leagues I traded him away just because I felt like his price was very high. People were getting excited about him coming back. And again, you look at JD's team, he has Jung and Arenado, which, Caminero's arguably already potentially better than both those guys. So it's not like he has to trade away Caminero because he has those guys. But if he's competing right now and he has two of these really valuable assets that are down in the farm, and he can get a guy like Spencer Strider, projected 280 Ks, and add that to his rotation. His rotation's good, but it's like he's rostering Taijuan Walker. You drop Taijuan Walker, you add Spencer Strider, and it's like the best team. I know he didn't win last year, but in my opinion, he's probably the best roster in FTN. Just added far and away the best pitcher in baseball. You're giving up the best pitcher in baseball, which is hard to do, but you're getting Caminero and you're getting a guy in Baz who I think probably has top 10, top 15 SP upside. Baz was rivaling what G-Rod did in the minors when Baz was in the minors. This is a guy who has serious upside. So it's three players that these owners don't want to trade away, but I think someone like Spencer Strider might be the only way that JD gets rid of Caminero and Baz.
Yeah, and JD, just from my experience with JD in this league, he's a volume guy. Doesn't give a fuck about ERA and WHIP. He's a firm believer you can't control it. So you just go for pure volume, which is why he's got some sketch pitchers on his roster. He'll do it throughout the season. He'll pick up guys for spot starts when he needs. That's the big JD strategy, always has been. I think what people fail to realize about Strider, because I've gotten offers in excess of 200 to 300 BAM for Strider. The problem is if Strider was 30 years old, 31 years old, then sure, that's pretty accurate. But you're talking about, and I'm going to look this up because I don't know how old Spencer Strider is off the top of my head. He's 25.
He's 25? Yeah.
25. So you're talking about he's the best pitcher fantasy-wise in baseball. You can make the argument he's not the best pitcher in baseball, but fantasy-wise, he's the best pitcher in baseball. Mm-hmm. Pretty 1-2 with Garrett Cole. But Garrett Cole is older, significantly older. Mm-hmm. Not significantly, but older. Spencer Strider is 25, and you're talking about I can have this guy at no additional cost to me for the next 10 years, while hopefully he continues to be the best pitcher in baseball. Obviously, that can change. And there's risk involved with me not selling him.
Can I push back on that real quick? 2 years ago, I'm gonna talk specifically like fantasy baseball here, even though best pitcher in baseball, best pitcher in fantasy baseball is probably similar. But 2 years ago, it was probably Corbin Burns, almost surely. I think Burns has trended down a little bit. He's 2021, I think, was his peak, and each of the seasons after that, he's slowly sort of been trending down a bit. Last year, it was probably Burns, Strider, and Shane Mack in some order at the top. I think a lot of people would have had Shane McClanahan as the best pitcher, and then boom, Tommy John, he's out. So it's like if something happens like that with Strider, I just feel like in today's game, we saw this last year too. Maybe some of this had to do with the implementation of the pitch clock, but there were just so many pitching injuries last year. Pitchers get injured so frequently. Strider throws the ball so hard. I think he's a worrisome asset to own, just purely from the fact if you could cash out and get a return like this, you get a guy in Baz who's already had TJ, which is that's one of my strategies, and to some extent, is finding guys that have already had Tommy John. I know you can get it twice like Bueller, but finding guys that have already had it, so that you have less of a chance of having to deal with it in the future. So I feel like the best pitcher in fantasy baseball changes fairly rapidly. And a lot of that has to do with injury. A lot of it has to do with volatility and decline. But continue on what you were saying.
No, but I would say I'm not expecting him to be the best pitcher in baseball every single year. That's unrealistic. No guy wins the Cy Young every single year. But if I can have a guy who's going to go out consistently, win 15 to 16 games, and get me 250 strikeouts every year, even if his ERA and WHIP fluctuates, even if the win totals and Ks fluctuate a little bit, that to me is a top 5 pitcher. And you're talking about he's 25 years old, so I could potentially have 10 plus years of production from this guy. Even if he's not the best pitcher in baseball, he is one of the top pitchers in baseball, and that's my hope. And obviously, like you said, there's a lot of risk. I lost Shane McClanahan, huge blow to my team. I think if you add back Shane McClanahan and Brandon Woodruff to my rotation, I'm a serious contender. Losing those two hurt me a lot, obviously, and then I went ahead and traded my other 2 oldest pitchers for some future value. It's an interesting trade. JD will never trade me Caminero. Before Caminero was even a top 100 prospect, back when it was just me and JD hype about this guy, I offered him.
Oh, I've been hyped about him for a long time. Max can attest to this.
I offered him 75 BAM before he was even a top 100 prospect, and JD said no because he'll be worth more than that one day.
Yep.
God fucking damn it, he was.
That would be hard to decline, but I would have agreed. I mean, I don't know if I would have declined, but I would have thought for sure that he would be worth more than that one day.
Crazy.
I think it would be. Yeah, I'm jealous of him. Maybe if I can pry Caminero from him, I'll trade him to you for Strider. We'll see.
All right, so let's move on to the next team. So this is going to be involving Adam and Max. Now this is a really interesting one. So this is going to be that Adam trades Tariq Skubal for Jose Altuve. So why don't you kind of talk us through this one?
Yeah, so I've had a couple of some trade discussions with Adam recently regarding my middle infield, and I think kind of the conclusion with that was I didn't really want to trade, and he's not exactly sure if he needs middle infield. Maybe he doesn't need it as bad as he once thought he did. I was looking at his roster, and I don't know. I think he needs it. I know he just. I know he's an FTN legend. He has a very good roster, but I think. I mean, right now he's got Brandon Drury at his middle infield spot. He has Brandon Lau on the roster. That doesn't inspire much confidence. Maybe I know he has Joey Ortiz in his farm. Ortiz is probably going to be playing every day for the Brewers.
Right.
Probably, but they also have Adames still, and Tyler Black, and Bryce Terang, and now they're saying that Sal Frelick is going to play second base and third base. So, maybe Joey Ortiz isn't going to play every day, even though I think he probably should. He's like an elite defender. So maybe he's banking on Joey Ortiz, but I think that's a little bit risky, just given that the Brewers, things with the Brewers are crowded right now. I think Jose Altuve would be really good for this lineup. I mean, Brandon Drury's projected decent counting stats, but I mean, Altuve if he stays healthy, is going to have over 100 runs. He's going to get you some steals. He's going to have very good OBP. It just seems like the type of move acquiring Altuve makes sense for a roster like this that is fully in win now and contention mode. On the flip side for Max, I know he has a very old roster. Honestly, I don't know how Max has performed the past few seasons in FTN.
He somehow always magically does well. It really makes you it boggles my mind sometimes.
Well, he has some nice pieces on this roster. I mean, but the pitching staff I think really could use a lot of work. I don't know if he's just going for the throw innings at it approach, but I mean, this is tough to see because 2 years ago, this staff would have been very exciting with Shane Bieber, Dylan Cease, Alek Manoah. I mean, this would have been probably one of the top staffs in FTN, and now Cease and Manoah have taken a free fall. Bieber, it seems to be declining, although I saw he went to, I don't know if it was Driveline or somewhere this offseason, seems to have added some velo back to his pitches. So maybe Shane Bieber's a buy right now. But getting a guy like Tariq Skubal, who I think, a lot of the advanced analytics paint him as like a no doubt top 10 pitcher. The question really is, can he stay healthy? But a guy that's going to get you a lot of Ks and potentially very elite ratios on, in a good pitcher's park with a potentially improving Tigers lineup in the coming years.
You got the Tariq Skubal auto.
I love it. I think the Tigers could be a pretty good team in a couple of years, and that means that division certainly doesn't have any team that presents a massive threat as a dynasty looming in the coming years. But Max Clark, Colt Keith, Riley Green, Jackson Jobe, Skubal. I mean, it could be a decent team in a few years. So getting a guy like that for an Altuve whose value is probably only going to decline in the coming years could just be a good way for Max to get younger and cash out while Altuve still has peak value.
So I'll say two things. One, I would agree. I would say this. The Tigers historically have shown that they are capable of identifying pitchers. Even if they don't hold on to them long enough, they are good at identifying elite starting pitching. I mean, you go through the list of guys who have come through the Tiger system. It's absolutely insane. So I'm going to say I'm a big Skubal fan. I think he's going to do great things, even if it's not with the Tigers down the road. Okay. Secondly, I don't think this trade goes far enough. I think that if Adam is really going for it, he wants to win the championship. You get Altuve and you get Pete Alonso. You go for the twofer and you plunder the farm system if you have to do it. Listen, I know he's a big Samuel Basallo fan.
He is. I thought about including Basallo somehow, but I don't know if I could have JD getting rid of Caminero and Adam getting rid of Basallo. Then it might just seem too unrealistic at that point.
But I think for a guy like Pete Alonso, who's going to hit you, depending on where he goes, obviously, because I don't think he's going to end up staying with the Mets. So, if he goes to a hitter-friendly park, he could be putting up 40 homers pretty regularly. And then you talk about Altuve, his floor. Now, I'm with you. I think that, goddamn it, Altuve obviously is going to have a more rapid decline in value. Not rapid, but he's older. So I believe he's older.
He is, yeah. And the fall off for second base when you get to Altuve's age is pretty steep. Although he did just sign that, that 5-year extension. So he's going to be around for a while, and he's going to be on a good team. Just briefly, I will say that the only reason I didn't make a trade for Alonso is just because Adam does already have Goldschmidt and Casas, and he has Shohei in his util spot. So then, he could replace Bohm. Right now, his roster has Alec Bohm and util. He could swap Pete Alonso in there, but then you're locked in. You have, those util spots are completely locked in because you're not taking out Pete, you're not taking out Shohei. Whereas Altuve, I think you could take out Brandon Drury for Altuve. But I think that your point makes sense. Where if you're going to do this, there are some solid win now pieces besides Altuve on Max's roster, but you could go for an even bigger trade.
And we've been saying this for years, and it has yet to come through. But at some point, Max's roster is going to get old. These guys are going to start to drop off. It's going to happen at some point in time, even if we're completely wrong about when it will happen. And you look at it, when we did that, we looked at average roster age, and Max is at like 31 or 32 years old, which is insane considering there are teams in the league that are at 24, 25, 26. So you're talking about a big difference. And he's going to find it hard to replace some of these guys. At some point in time, Jose Altuve is going to be like I can't predict how he's going to do, but I would imagine Jose Altuve maybe can get you 15 to 20 home runs a year with 5 to 10 stolen bases. I could see that as a viable stat line here in 2 years' time. At that kind of stat line, is he worth the same price? No, absolutely not. And you're going to have to replace him with someone better. I think if the opportunity is there for Adam to go and acquire, if Max can go and acquire the young guys in Adam's farm system, the trade makes total sense. But I think unless, it's a tough one. It really is a tough one to me because I can see it from both sides. But I know
I think Adam also
want to do this.
I know Adam also might have to be he might have to be a little bit careful. His team is already very good. He just might have to be a little bit careful of going too old when he already has Goldschmidt. He has Semyon. Bregman's 30 now. Schwarber's over the age of 30. Of course, Tucker, Tatis, Shohei are all on the younger side. But I think you don't want to get to a point where Goldschmidt and Semyon and maybe if Pete starts to fall off a little bit and Altuve are all declining at the same point. But what's the saying? Flags fly forever. I mean, you get a couple championships out of it, and it's certainly worth it, even if Samuel Pasalo ends up a stud.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so moving on
Okay.
to our last trade of the night. Why don't you go ahead and take it over?
Yeah, so I was hoping that it wouldn't be a Sean and Jacob trade just because they already made a big trade for Trey Turner, but that's just sort of the way um, the board fell. And this one isn't quite as exciting, I don't think, as some of the previous trades. We have Sean trading Drew Thorpe, Chase Petty, Prelander Baroa, Ben Joyce, and 10 Bam to Jacob for David Bednar. I think that this could be. I don't. You know what? Again, this is sort of like I think with these, less some of the less valuable name trades, like Ryan's trading of the prospects for Painter and this one. I don't know if the value is right. I don't know how people feel about it. Um, from my brief experience, it seems like people in here really value relief pitching, even though it's a save hold league. Um, but it seems like,
That's the funny
especially
thing, isn't it?
that Seattle contingent really values elite relief pitching and getting good Ks while maintaining elite ratios. Um, and Sean could definitely use some relief pitching. I mean, I didn't look at his farm system for relievers, but just looking on ESPN, he's projected to have Chris Martin with 31 saves, Hader obviously completely elite with 38, and then Matt Strom with 17. Um, Obviously, given our settings with 2 RPs and 3 Ps, you can start up to 5 relief pitchers. So getting a guy like Bednar, who has a really good ratio, it's good K numbers, is going to get you 35 save holds a year. Seems like it makes sense for a guy who's wanting to compete and establish himself in that upper echelon. And for Jacob, I think you're getting a minimal amount of BAM, obviously, but for somewhat to fairly decent prospects. I mean, Drew Thorpe what was he? I think he was awarded minor league pitcher of the year last year. He goes to a fairly pitcher friendly park in Petco. I think we could see him up this year. Chase Petty is like every fantasy analyst's like prospect breakout pick because I know that obviously he was throwing absolute gas in high school, and then early on in his minor league career he was dialing it back to like 92, harnessing the command and control, and now he's back up to 99. It seems like in some of these spring training videos. Prelander Baroa just went to the White Sox. He has nasty stuff. Ben Joyce obviously with the record. What was it, like 105.5 mile per hour fastball?
Yeah.
So you're getting a couple of decent shots at potential stud relievers, a couple of good starting pitching options, and 10 BAM. Just seems like a trade that could make sense. I know that obviously Jacob's team isn't competing right now, so adding more prospects and more BAM to that team for when he eventually is ready to compete, just give him more shots at guys panning out could make sense. But what do you think?
First off, I love this deal for Jacob. I mean, you talk about if I could get a hold of Drew Thorpe and Ben Joyce, I would be, and just those two guys, I would be thrilled with that. Obviously, there's a lot of love for Chase Petty. I think he's probably one of the more valuable pieces in this deal. But to just give up a guy like David Bednar, and I'm with you 100%. For some reason, there are people in this league who absolutely love relief pitching. It's like you can go out and find a guy who's going to get 25 to 30 safe holds any given year just off the free agency list because that's how quickly relief pitchers change. So it's like I don't really see the point in paying a lot for a relief pitcher ever. I mean, I know I bought Aroldis Chapman last year, but it was for a minimal price. It's like it's better just to be like, guys like Mariano Rivera. Like, sure, I understand that. A guy who's got a proven track record every year is great. Understand. But it's a guy like David Bednar. He's done it 1 year. He was incredible. I understand he's been good, But am I going to go out and give up all these pieces for him? No, probably not. But Sean might. Sean loves his relief pitching. And in Jacob's case, I think it's something that affects all three of you in that division. The teams that you drafted from did not have good starting rotations. And the pieces that were good in those rotations, you traded away for other value. So it's like, there are certain things.
Yep.
It's like, Ryan's, my God. I said this to, I can't remember who, and I know I've been saying it, but Ryan has the worst starting rotation I've ever seen in the history of the league. I mean, it is so unbelievably bad. So it's like, and I look at Jacobs, and Jacobs not terrible. I mean, he's got
You mean to tell me you're not a Jose or Quiddy fan?
No, I don't even care who Ryan has. I just look at his roster and it makes me want to vomit. I'm like, this is so bad. I guess my problem with Jacob's roster is there's no depth on the pitching side. He's got his guys, and they're okay. I wouldn't say any of them are standout candidates on the pitching side. I mean, maybe Mitch Keller. He's probably the only one where I'm like, he's a really, he can be a really, really good pitcher. And on a team that's getting better too. But it's like he has no depth. He's got one starting pitcher on the bench. You need more guys than that if you want to win pitching categories. Because even if your ERA and WHIP's elite, which it's not, you're going to have to try and compete for wins, Ks, and save holds. Maybe he's competing for save holds with this kind of roster, but he's not competing for any of those other categories. So I think the addition of 2 or 3 guys who could, in a year or two, be up producing for you, even if they're not aces, even if they're not complete studs, in the aggregate, getting you 350 to 400 strikeouts in a given year with 25 to 30 wins, awesome. Like, that's a total win because all you're giving up is a guy who's probably going to get 35 safe holds with a mid-2, maybe high-2 ERA, and he could be worse. He's not going to be any better than that. So there's a lot to like for Jacob in this deal. I think this is realistically something Sean would consider with some slight tweaks. I don't think he would give up that much starting pitching value just for David Bednar. But I think that he may be able to give up 1 or 2 of those guys.
I agree with you. I think if I was Jacob, I would make this trade, and if I was Sean, I wouldn't. That just comes down to my view about relief pitchers in a save hold league, and maybe get rid of the 10 ban. Maybe that was too much. But I was just, I don't know. Yeah, it sounds like maybe you're higher on some of these guys, but I like the stuff of Prelander and Petty and Ben Joyce. I still think they're dart throws. Drew Thorpe is maybe a little bit more of a sure thing, just because he was great last year. He's had a decent track record now and is probably going to pitch in the majors this year. So maybe feel a little bit more confident about him. But even then, he's not a top 50 prospect, I don't think. So you're not really giving up any surefire prospects. And so I did think about maybe is it too much, but at the end of the day, a lot of these guys are dart throws, which for a David Bednar seems like it could make sense for a team like Sean, whose contention window does seem to be now.
And Sean, if you do want to trade any of these guys, please reach out to me because I will acquire Drew Thorpe or Ben Joyce in a heartbeat. So just want to end that.
Yeah, I feel like that. Yeah, that goes for a lot of these guys. You already put a claim on Sean trading those guys. I'll put a claim on Drew. If you do want to trade Juan Soto, please reach out to me. I would be happy to talk with you. I know we have our differences in how we go about approaching trades, but dude, I got to tell you, for a guy like Juan Soto, I'll wait as long as you want me to. You just reach out to me. So,
I can't wait for the annual I am not trading Juan Soto or Bo Bichette because I know it's coming and he's going to ride. Listen, Bo Bichette, he's going to ride that dude into the ground like Brady Singer. Because I do not think highly of Bo Bichette at this point in time. Juan Soto is obviously a completely different category.
See, a lot of people are excited for opening day. A lot of people are excited for this week 1 matchup. Me personally, I'm excited for week 3 when it's a Sunday and I get a text from Drew at 4:00 in the afternoon on Sunday from the box score where Bo Bichette has gone 4 for 5 with no runs, no home runs, and no RBIs, and he says, "What the fuck?" That's what I can't wait for. That's what I'm looking forward to this baseball season.
Well, on that, I think it's about time for us to end. We're nearing the 50-minute mark, so thank you all for joining us tonight. It's been fun. Let us know what you think. I'm sure there's going to be some roasting where we're called idiots for our takes, but that's
Yeah,
part of the
please,
fun.
please. The whole point of this exercise is to get some chatter going. So please do let us know what you think. I think all of these trades make sense to some extent, but please do roast us. We will be eagerly awaiting it.
All right. Thank you all for joining us.